Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Talking Jesus, and we're episode 4 of this season already in Talking Jesus, and we are following The Chosen. And if you're new to the broadcast, thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of this broadcast. We like to discuss and break down the episodes of The Chosen, and currently we're in season 2, and Stephen and Gramus and myself, we go through each episode and we break it down and we help make sense of some of the stuff, or maybe point out some of the stuff you might have missed. So as always, spoiler alerts ahead. If you haven't watched this episode, you might want to go ahead and turn it off and watch it on replay. Go watch the main episode. But if you already watched the episode, fantastic. You'll be able to join in dialogue, and maybe you'll tell us something that you caught that we missed. So as always, my faithful guest, my co-host for this episode of Talking Jesus is Stephen Ignoramus. Stephen, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you as always, Frank. Looking forward to talking about this episode. This one was by far my favorite one of the season so far. It was really long. It was fast paced actually, so I'm looking forward to talking about it.
That's a big statement, because you've been sitting on episode 1 for a while now, and saying that was your favorite.
Yeah, I like this one more. Yeah, it was definitely. Wow. Yeah, definitely. Like slightly, and we'll get into why and things like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
All right. Hello, Roofing Dude, Bear, and Tree. Thank you for being here tonight. Hey, Stephen, go ahead and do our nightly disclaimer, and then we'll get to going.
All right. As always, The Chosen is based on the true stories of the Gospels of Jesus Christ. Some locations and timelines have been combined or condensed. Backstories and some characters or dialogue have been added. However, all biblical and historical context and any artistic imagination are designed to support the truth and intention of the Scriptures. Viewers are encouraged to read the Gospels. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys, we are in season 2, episode 4 of The Chosen, and I hope you guys have watched it, because as Stephen had mentioned, this truly is one of my favorite episodes of this season. I've already watched ahead. I'm in episode 5 already, and that is my favorite episode of the season so far.
Oh.
And but we won't talk about episode 5. We're here to talk about episode 4. And Stephen, man, let me tell you what. The opening of this episode, the first 9 minutes of this episode, not one word of dialogue.
Yeah. It was
wow.
Great. And they're doing their, I brought this up the last couple weeks, but the people that make this show are pretty good at what they do in terms of variation. Some, last week was all one camera shot, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
And this week had another kind of artistic thing like that. And I noticed one thing about this episode was the number of different scenes. It had it was back and forth a bunch of times. So there were very few very long scenes, other than the first one, of course. And
the first one.
That was a great montage. Yeah, it was awesome.
It was, and I always point this out to the audience, that Stephen, that you're an artistic guy. You play music and you have an ear for this stuff. You teach it. So storytelling, just with the music. Tell me about that with this first 9 minutes, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, music is about affecting and, dare I say, like manipulating your emotions. And I don't mean that really in a bad way. I mean, it can be a bad way, but it can be a good way. But basically, it just told the story of two brothers, and one of them, the older one, was crippled, and the younger brother can walk. And the music was great, and they even showed a scene in that montage of them dancing, and that was very heartwarming, where the brother kind of brought the rest of the dancers over to the crippled brother, and they were like swinging their arms, letting him participate in things like that. But yeah, I mean, one thing I'm going to do for next time is look up the scoring of this of this show, like see who does it. But I thought the musical work in the beginning was masterful. It was great.
Oh, absolutely. And so when this episode first started off, Stephen, I didn't know where it was going to go, because obviously no dialogue, and you have these two characters. You're trying to figure out who these two characters might be as you're watching it. And it starts off with a young boy, and he's heading off to a tree, and he climbs the tree, he falls off the tree, and he hurts himself. And so his father, rushes him back home, and it looks like he's being attended to by some type of physician, and they're poking his feet and trying to see if he has any type of sensation. And it turns out that he injured his lower back where he paralyzed himself. And
yeah, and it's gonna, in this montage, to be honest, I kind of did, I know we're gonna talk about the whole episode, but I kind of did know where it was going as soon as the kid got hurt.
Okay.
Like I was like, I knew it was gonna. I mean, I guessed and I was correct about what Bible verse and what story it was gonna reference.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
I was completely taken off guard, watching it for the first time and not knowing where it was actually going to go. But it was truly, it surprised me, I guess, as we'll later talk on. But, this whole first 9 minutes, it takes you us from the boy falling out of the tree. He's probably, 6, maybe 7 at the oldest. Yeah. And, the father, he sees him outside watching the other kids play. He's just sitting on the ground. He feels really bad about it. And so what they do, it looks like that he gives over a handsome amount of money to it would look to me like a witch doctor almost, trying to perform some type of ritual to get his legs to work again.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was, one of the themes of this episode is paganism.
Yes.
And, that was, there was a quick nod to that in the beginning, and then that gets dealt with and talked about later in the episode as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was interesting when I saw that. I figured it wasn't a Jewish religious leader doing that ceremony. It looked like more something like you said, paganism.
Yeah, like a magician or something like that.
Magician. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. But and then we cut to the next quick scene is the mother is in labor, and she dies during childbirth. And of course, the midwife has to, they don't show it, but she has to cut the baby out. And right after that scene, it cuts to, the older brother holding the baby, and while the father's trying to cook. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of falls into these two brothers developing a bond with each other. Right.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like a growing up montage, things like that. Mm-hmm. And it kind of he starts, one of the scenes that is he's pushing his brother on a cart, and they see the Romans beating up another Jew.
Now I watched this episode a few times, not as many as some of the other episodes, but I think I've watched this one 4 times, and I'm uncertain. Maybe or maybe you caught it. Was that their father that the Jewish soldiers were beating on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think that was just one of their people.
Gotcha. Okay. Because my wife, Sharon was asking me, she's like, was that the dad? I was like, I don't know. Yeah. And went back a few different times, but I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they were just randomly walking in town and they saw one of their people getting beat.
And that really stirs up a lot of anger with the younger brother.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, so like, probably I think the end of this scene is him leaving, right? He gets a scroll or something like that.
Yep.
And the crippled brother, the older brother, is like shaking his head at him, but it turns out this guy leaves and he's going to train with what we learn later is the Zealots.
Yes. And so from there we cut to the credits or the opening song, and then we go into the next scene, which is
you know what? Actually, inside of this scene, they introduced the fountain for the first time.
I'll say I have to back up for a second.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I forgot about that too.
Yeah.
So they introduced this magical fountain. Well, we learn more about it later, but it's basically when the fountain springs up, the older brother tries to go dive toward it. It's got some sort of supposed healing power, or something like that. And during people are stepping on him, but it does cut scenes with the younger brother getting trained militarily, and it ends with the older brother giving up by the side of the pool, and the younger brother receiving his knife from the organization that he has then joined.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I thought that was in the next, but you're right. That all happened in that first 9 minutes. Right. And now we cut into the first actual dialogue scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's with him training with the Zealots. Yeah, and so they get, he said it introduces that his name is Simon. It's the Apostle Simon the Zealot, who is the one of the apostles that spoke about the least amount in the Gospels, and I believe it's 4 different verses in the Bible where his name is mentioned. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Acts is where he's referenced. So
Now, real quick, a little history on the Zealots, because I didn't know about them until this episode.
Yeah, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
I actually, it's interesting. My dad actually told me about them when I think I was 8 years old.
Okay.
I learned about them, back in the day, just random biblical history from my dad.
Yeah, so let's fill in the chat with who are the Zealots real quick before we kind of move on, because the Zealots organization in this actually plays a part in this entire story.
Yeah. So you want me to just read some about them?
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So this is the Zealots were a political movement in first century Second Temple Judaism, which sought to incite the people of Judea province to rebel against the Roman Empire and expel it from the Holy Land by force of arms. And most notably during the First Jewish-Roman War, which is right before the destruction of the temple. So that war I'm referencing is about 30 years after Jesus' resurrection. But they were basically an organization. I mean, you can think of them as a terrorist organization. I mean, it's
that's how the Rome viewed them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter and all that. But yeah, they're essentially a Jewish independence movement.
Yeah, and so.
And the word zealot is now used often in the English language for a person that's like, a radical or someone who's very passionate about a certain cause. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're introduced to the Zealots, and we're introduced to this. I believe it's the first scene. Is it the first scene where he's training to take out the Roman magistrate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they haven't really introduced to Simon yet who his target is going to be. But it's basically him. There, it looks like it's a real. Actually, it looks like it's a real assassination. But then it pans out and it shows that they're just doing an exercise. They light a fire, they spill some fruit, and it turns out he puts a dagger to the guy's neck and just says, "No Lord but God," and it ends up being just a training exercise.
Right, and everybody claps and they say that they think Simon is the person for this mission to go to Jerusalem to assassinate the magistrate there.
Yeah, and I obviously I don't want any spoilers about the next episode or whatever, but inside of that scene, 2 of the zealot leaders meet and they say, basically Caiaphas, the high priest, that he might be to blame, like he might get caught up in the blame for this guy getting attempted assassination. I don't know if that happens in the next episode, but don't tell me.
I won't tell you.
Sweet.
But we're also introduced to the person that is tracking the Zealots as well in that scene.
Yeah, that's later. That's late when they go to Jerusalem. That's so.
No,
you mean they see that guy when see that guy when Jesus and the apostles are like the first time they see the people being crucified. That's when you see okay.
No, we got to go back because he was watching them from the bluffs. He was watching the exercise from the bluffs.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, he was watching the exercise.
Oh, that's who that dude was.
Yeah,
thanks, Frank. Yeah, okay. Interesting. So he was up on it the whole time.
Right. He was already, reconnaissance and trying to get that, trying to figure out who they were targeting.
Yeah. All right. Very nice. Yeah, I didn't get that.
Yeah. So that's this is our first introduction to this. We don't get his name in this scene, but we notice that he is somebody that's kind of watching, and we don't even know he's Roman at this point yet.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's white, so usually when they got a white boy in this series, it's a Roman.
Very true.
Yeah.
All right, so we head over to. I think we cut over to Simon, our Simon Peter, with Andrew and all the other disciples.
Yeah, it's just the apostles kind of working, and they're building. This. I don't remember the name of the. I think the name of the episode is the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yes,
and so that's what they're they're kind of setting up for, and that's called Sukkot is the Hebrew name for it. Feast of the Tabernacles, or the Feast of Shelters, or the Feast of Booths.
Right.
So then that's one of three, Old Testament Jewish holidays where the men basically have to present themselves to God in Jerusalem.
Right. Yeah, they would have to travel to Jerusalem, and in this scene, I believe it's they're all talking amongst each other and talking about what they know, and I think Mary says, why is it only the men that go to the to Jerusalem? And then Peter chimes in and he says, well, the journey could be perilous, and women and children and elderly sometimes can't make it if they don't have protection. But then Peter comes back with that same statement and says he's taken Eden many times to go to the feast. So
sure. Yeah, I don't know if that, and they also say that no one, like the women aren't forbidden from going.
Yeah,
but
that's what. Yeah, he also said that.
Right.
They're not forbidden, but that's only if they're able to make that journey, if they can make it there.
Yeah.
And a little humor in this scene too. Andrew's wrapping up some thorny looking things, and he like pricks himself, and he starts sucking on his finger. And Simon or Peter's like, I need to head into the city. I need some bodies to go with me. And Andrew's like, pick me.
Will you stop doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought that was the humor between two brothers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got to make sure that we, going forward, we probably have to make sure that we call Peter Peter and not Simon Peter, because there's now another. So that's, in the gospel story, there's like 2 or 3 different Judas. There's 2 or 3 different John. There's 2 or 3 different James. So, because, Mark was named John as well. John Mark. Yeah. So anyway.
And then we have, Big James and Little James, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So now we head over to the next scene, and this is Simon, the zealot, coming into Jerusalem. No.
He's meeting with the leader now.
He's meeting with the leader
of the zealots. Yeah, and one thing I was saying off air is that there's a lot of scripture in this in this episode, and one of the books that's referenced a lot is Zephaniah. And so I think that the 2 brothers, the zealot and the crippled older brother, they kind of share.
I think his name's Jesse.
Jesse, yeah, exactly. They share this passage from Zephaniah, which is also quoted in the scene that Simon meets with the leader, and that's I believe Zephaniah 3:16 through 19. Just kind of.
Yeah. If you want to put it in the chat, people can go and look at it on their own time. Sure,
yeah. Oh, because I'm a mod on this channel. Very nice.
Yeah, you are.
All right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So there's Bible Gateway for you guys in the chat.
All right. So thank you for posting that there. And so he accepts this assignment, but the leader, the religious leader or the zealot leader in this case, tells Simon that if he fails, don't ever come back.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And what's up?
I'll say he was also the zealot leader. He also mentions, he said you'll meet up, rendezvous with your brother, and he's like, brother, because he automatically thinks of his brother Jesse, but the leader's obviously talking about his other zealot brothers.
Yeah.
So it kind of startles him a little bit, kind of jars him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, actually, one thing in this scene that was interesting that I just thought of is that. So they quote scripture. So what happens here is the leader says, as the scripture, and he's like, which scripture? And he says, Moses Shemot, and that's Exodus, right?
Okay.
And the verse from Exodus that they're referencing is any whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord must be destroyed. Now, in Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments, it also says, thou shalt not murder. So
right.
I just thought that it was an interesting example of, a person using scripture or cherry picking scripture maybe out of context to achieve means that, violate scripture, because obviously the Hebrew law is directed at the Hebrews, not at the Romans. And it doesn't mean to go out and murder any person from a different people that doesn't that sacrifices the other. So it's just an example of, how someone could use scripture for a bad purpose. I mean, like the devil quotes scripture during the temptation of Jesus.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was an interesting, thing. I'm sure that if they, we've talked about interviewing the people from The Chosen before, that would be a thing I asked them. Is like, did you mean to like say, to convey that message during the scene?
And what's interesting, this is kind of just a foreshadowing for later on, because, just the discussion that we just talked about is because Jesse and Simon both have the same discussion about the 10 Commandments and him murdering.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll get to that later, but there's a interaction.
Yeah. Nice find. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, they do reference that same thing. Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
And so, we move on, we keep going here. And as he's leaving the temple or the hideout or whatever, he passes by a room and they're chanting that same verse.
That's from Zephaniah. Yeah. And it's
okay.
on that day, they will say to Jerusalem, do not fear, Zion. Do not let your hands hang limp. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing.
Right.
Yep.
And so he kind of soothed by hearing that. It looks like, as he's walking by. And then we cut to him coming into the city. Is that where we cut into?
They do just a quick scene where they reintroduce Shmuel.
That's what it was. Yeah. Shmuel.
So,
you said it. He would be back.
Yep. Yeah.
Last season.
And one thing I didn't remember that I looked up is that is actually the name Samuel.
Yeah.
Shmuel is how you say is like supposedly Samuel in ancient Hebrew or whatever.
Yeah. But Stephen did say last season, he said, look out for Shmuel. He'll probably be back next season.
Absolutely.
After he had that talk with Nicodemus talking about going to Jerusalem to look at false teachers.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And so there's a quick like kind of comic relief scene with his fellow Pharisee or whatever.
Now, is that Pharisee higher than he is?
I don't know, actually.
He had different robes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might have been the Pharisee that reports the miracle to Shmuel later. Okay. I didn't like look at their faces that closely. But they definitely have different robes. Maybe it's a Pharisee and a Sadducee. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like you said, a little comic relief here because he's setting up his little stand to teach the people, and before he's like, oh, we need to pray, and so he starts doing a prayer. He's like, well, that's a prayer for to protect against violence or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I don't remember what the prayer. It's kind of. I think the prayer was, "Blessed are you, Lord, who is good and does good." But there's always the old Hebrews. There's these book of prayers, the like rabbinical prayers, and there's so many different ones. So I guess they, it's all about foreshadowing, I guess, because there is going to be some drama later.
Yes, and we get a little bit of a sneak peek at that here a little bit later as well.
Yeah.
Well, a couple different things happen. That foreshadow. It's going to foreshadow later in the series, I believe, and one foreshadows later in the episode. But from here, I think we move back to the Simon entering the city. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, again, there's another quick scene, and that was one of the things I liked about this episode is there was a lot of quick scenes where they just like bounce back and forth, but it was a quick interaction between Jesse, the crippled brother, and his he is a friend at the pool, and he basically just asks him,
"Why are you still here?"
Why are you still here if you don't have any hope? So that's quick. But then it goes to Simon the Zealot entering Jerusalem, and we see our first crucifixion essentially.
Yes, we do, which is obviously a foreshadowing to what's going to happen later. And he comes into the city gates, and he's stopped by the Roman guards and questioned why he's coming in. And I didn't realize did they question every visitor that was coming into Jerusalem at each gate? Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I suppose they might, but I don't know. I don't know the way it would kind of work, but they also introduce, who that guy that you mentioned earlier, like the Roman, he's like secret police or something like that, or an elite secret investigator. But I don't know. He gets questioned, and Simon the Zealot asks the Roman guard something too, like what did the guys do? What was the crime that the guys were being crucified for?
He said murder.
Murder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Barabbas a murderer?
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
It's intense.
Yep,
And,
that's what the Roman said, because I was expecting him to say something like a thief or something, but no, he said murderer. I was like, oh, yeah, well, I guess that would earn capital punishment.
Right. Yeah.
So here we cut back to the scene with, don't we cut back to Thomas and...
Yes, Thomas and Nathaniel, and this is a funny scene.
It's an interesting scene.
Yeah, because he's, Thomas and Matthew get compared a lot. They're both the math types, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And we really see how straightforward Nathaniel is, like no filter. Because what's his name? Thomas is looking to want to eat into the he's like, it's taking all I have not to bite into this pomegranate. He's like, well, I wouldn't. I saw stains on the vendor. It looked like baby throw up. And he's like, I know, I was there when you told him.
Yeah. The dynamic between the apostles is pretty funny at this point.
And as they're going through the scene, they come into the area where we last saw Samuel, and he's preaching to it looks like a small gathering there,
right?
Talking about false teachers. And Matthew, it pans over to Matthew. He's kind of like hiding up against a pillar and trying to get the attention of Thomas and Nathaniel.
Yeah, and while he's actually while Shmuel is speaking, that he's preaching from Lamentations. Okay. So the sentence on false prophets. It's Lamentations 2:14 is the verse, and it's, your prophets have seen for you false and deceptive visions. They have not exposed your iniquity to restore your fortunes, but have seen for you oracles that are false and misleading. So he's basically warning about that, and that's the scripture that Matthew, they think that he's talking about Jesus, because Shmuel witnessed Jesus performing a miracle in Capernaum in season 1.
Yep. And that's what Matthew's trying to warn Thomas and Nathaniel about, that they know them, and Nathaniel's like, well, they don't know our faces, so you make sure you warn the others and let them know. Yeah.
And one quick thing that was really funny about this scene is that, this is not really biblical or scriptural or whatever, but, Thomas says that he doesn't like Matthew. He's like, he's really annoying to me. And then Nathaniel's like, yeah, because you're just like each other. Yeah. And I find that to be pretty true when you kind of like see something, you see the worst of yourself in someone else, and they remind you of what you don't like about yourself. And I just thought that to be pretty true and kind of hilarious.
Okay, so let's next scene. Actually, would you mind taking the next scene? I got to step away just for a moment.
Oh, sure. All right. Oh, solo on Frank's channel. Crazy. All right, guys. So in the next scene, well, I don't know if you guys remember from season 1, that Shmuel had called for Jesus' arrest. And, Shmuel was basically saying during this little sermon that some false teachers may bring with them an agenda, which, Jesus definitely is a good one, but an agenda nonetheless. But then after that, Simon the Zealot meets up with a fellow assassin, and what they're doing kind of is plotting to take out a Roman magistrate, and they're kind of formulating their plot and stuff like that. And they're saying that they had tracked this magistrate named Rufus's movements for a couple months, and they're saying that on Shabbat, he goes to his favorite restaurant and kind of tracking his movements. And one thing that gets brought up a lot in the Gospels, as you probably know, is the oral versus the written tradition. The scriptures are the written, and the oral tradition is, basically taken to task by Jesus, against the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So, and it gets brought up later. I don't know if you guys have read the Gospels, like, gathering wheat on the Sabbath, and Jesus healing on the Sabbath, and things like that. But anyway, one of the things that the magistrate is doing is he's basically he goes to a restaurant on the Sabbath because he knows Jews won't be there, and I don't know if it's a strategy thing. But that's basically a thing that gets brought up all the time in the gospel is like, what is work? What are you allowed to do on the Sabbath? Because it is a commandment, but also there's parts of the oral tradition that, aren't in the scripture. And Jesus,
they referenced the oral traditions later in the episode.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is interesting because Matthew brings it up and John says it's an oral tradition. We'll get to that a little bit later. So sounds like we were just talking about, what were we talking about?
This is the scene where they're kind of planning the assassination.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just saying that, since the Roman goes to his favorite place on the Sabbath, they're basically saying that it's hard to kind of kill the guy on the Sabbath because the streets are going to be clear because everyone's supposed to be resting. So that's kind of where we are. Yep.
And so we head over to the next scene, which is
that's like the building of their tabernacle. They're like own private little tabernacle with Jesus and Jesus is. Yep.
All we do is watch them build it. We don't have any dialogue in that scene, right?
It kind of, no, not really, but then kind of part of the same scene as them eating.
Okay, but
one thing I thought about during that is I wonder if they how they're in Exodus. There's the measurements. It lists the measurements of the tabernacle and what it should be made out of. And I just wondered if they, were thinking about that. Obviously they're not making a tabernacle, the tabernacle,
right?
Because there's a temple at the time, and all the measurements are listed in. Is it Ezra? No. I think it's
Numbers.
It's whatever. I mean the measurements for the actual temple.
Oh, okay.
When it's being built by Solomon, that might be like First Kings or something like that. But anyway, I don't know. I just kind of thought about it.
They Nathaniel's the one that designed this tabernacle for them, or this area to feast in, and then we cut to the dinner scene, and this is an interesting scene because there's a lot to unpack, and like I said, there's some foreshadowing in this scene coming up here.
Yeah. What are you thinking there? Like what
when James asked Jesus the question about, all the peoples of the earth are going to come and worship.
Like big picture foreshadowing. Yeah. Yes.
And he's like, what's it going to take for that to happen? They're like, the Romans and the other enemies of the Jews, they're all going to come here. To Gentiles and Jews going to sit at the same table. How's that possible? How's that going to come about? Mm-hmm. And Jesus said things are going to have to change, or something.
Yeah. Something's going to have to happen, something's going to have to change, And he also says everyone has wandered the wilderness at some point. I mean, you got to keep that in mind, even though the Hebrews were God's chosen people of the Old Testament. There was all these different other people groups at the same time. Many different.
And what Jesus means by wandering, is not so much wandering the wilderness, but everybody has a story and they've been lost. Everyone has been lost before. Yep. And his job, the reason he's here is to provide that path for salvation for the lost.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And they also mentioned in the scene that, it won't be Jerusalem as we know it. And and it sounds impossible. Then Mary says, she knows a few things about prophecies that sound impossible. Obviously, related to the virgin birth. Yeah.
And Matthew tells a joke in this scene. His first joke.
What was it again?
He says it would be nearly impossible to get all the people of the world to come to Jerusalem because Jerusalem can only hold. He's like, and he started. But I won't bore you with the calculations.
Nice. They're like nice.
Philip.
Well done.
Philip was next to him. He's like
nice.
Yeah. And
so then it kind of cuts after this to John and Peter telling Jesus about Shmuel.
Mm-hmm.
So
And Jesus has a little wisecrack, a little joke. He's like, "Our
Yeah.
spiel?" And he's like, "Oh yes, master." He's like, "I know it's our spiel."
Yeah. Yeah, and so
And
he's, there's it's just one of the examples of people labeling Jesus a false prophet or a blasphemer, or and we're going to see how that plays out.
yeah, and it's interesting because it kind of piggies back off to what just happened with the foreshadowing. When James had asked, what needs to happen, and he said things need to change, and that's when Jesus says to Peter and John, well, that works out perfectly if he's there in the town, because it's going to cause a scene.
Yep. Yeah.
If they run into each other, type deal. I don't want to give too much away of the episode yet until we get there. But so then we head over to the next scene.
Yeah, and so that's I think that's when Simon's like looking over Simon the Zealot is like looking over the city. Yeah. And what's the scripture right here? I will gather those. Oh yeah. So then they quote again from Zephaniah. I lost it. I'll just read from my notes.
Okay.
Yeah, they quote from, I will gather those of you that mourn for the festival. Behold, at the time I will deal with all your oppressors. A reading from the prophet Zephaniah. And then it's, so he looks over the city and sees men being crucified, and he's kind of like contemplating murdering this guy. And, and he knows that are murderers. And I think that's kind of just a quick scene. But after that, it's Jesus and the apostles walking up to Jerusalem, talking about basically that pagan healing pool.
Is it at the scene, or is it the scene with Simon and his brother at the pool?
That's later.
Okay.
Yeah, that's later. Yeah.
Okay.
It's, so because what they're doing
No,
in the scene
you're right.
with
You're
Jesus and them walking up is we don't really know at this point what the pool really is.
Right. We have an idea. When I saw the pool on the first time watching it, I had an idea of what it was at that point. I was like, okay, this is in John.
Where in John? Where are you talking about? Yeah.
The pool Bethesda. Isn't that John?
Yeah. Okay. So let me read this. Yeah. I didn't make that connection, but I had it pulled up. Now, after this, there were a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I had the scripture. I had this pulled up because of what happens later, but I didn't realize in the beginning of the chapter it mentions that. But is anything that I just read have to do with it being like pagan or like reference to like a Phoenician god or anything like that, or was that kind of artistic?
I don't know if it was artistic or not, but I was talking to one of my nephews. He's actually a scholar in biblical things, and he says it was a pagan thing and stuff like that. It was well known as something like that. So that dialogue there, maybe it wasn't in scripture, but it was known at the time, so they would have known about it.
Interesting. Wow. That's fascinating. Yeah. And so I looked this up too. Where's this at? So when Simon and Jesus and the 4 disciples with him when they're walking, they basically say that it's the Phoenician god Eshmun. So Eshmun was a Phoenician god of healing and the tutelary god of Sidon. Yeah. So tutelary is a deity or spirit who is a guardian, patron, and protector of a particular place. But they're basically just talking about how it's a pagan, almost like the magician in the beginning. Like,
and that's kind of a connection there because Matthew also chimes in this walk as they're walking. He says, I've read about these types of things in other places in the world where there's, but they don't know why it does what it does. And that's when Jesus says, somebody will eventually figure it out.
Fascinating. Yeah. And then it's like at the end of this scene is Jesus walking by the crucifixions, and it like slows down, and he like looks at them meaningfully. And
even that shot is a beautifully done too. of where it focuses on Jesus, the lighting and everything that went along with that shot. I thought really kind of gave you the weight of what was coming down the road still.
Yeah.
As what we know, obviously. So,
do you know how many seasons they said this was going to be?
7.
7. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We got a lot to go.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now we head back into the city. No, we cut back to the Roman marshal or whatever.
Yeah, this is where they're meeting under a
like
overhang or whatever, like
right.
a hallway or stone hallway. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, so it's the secret police guy meeting with. It's like a politician. I don't know who the guy all in white is, but at first I thought it was the magistrate, but it's not. It's
right, and the marshal basically tells him, he's like, if I knew you were going to walk around like a senator from Rome, we would have had this meeting elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, and he says, I don't get paid to blend in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a discussion back and forth, and he's basically telling them that there's going to be an assassination attempt on the magistrate, and why have you never decided to go ahead and break up the routine of how he operates his day, so that way it's not easily pinned down and tracked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's what he says.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they also say they're basically trying to catch the zealot in the act of doing it. They could arrest him now, or they could capture him and torture him. But what they want to do is they want to catch him in the act and kill him right there, and
tell them why.
Because they don't want to create martyrs.
Right.
Yeah, because martyrs spread the faith. Nothing spreads the faith like martyrs.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and so by locking him up or torturing him, he says he gains notoriety, and they take those stories back. But if he can kill him in the act, and that just means Rome was just that much better than they were. They can't take that story and make it into a rally cry.
Right. Yeah. And that's known to happen. I mean, it happened with Jesus, and it happened with the first couple generations of Christian martyrs. I mean, Saint Stephen, the first martyr, it spread the faith like it always does. When you have your heroes and your martyrs, it just people convert that way en masse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we head back over to Simon, and this time Simon and his brother Jesse.
Right, exactly. And this is a long scene, very, emotional scene and things like that. I really liked the adult actor that played Jesse.
I did too.
I thought he was very expressive. He didn't have, he cries a lot in these scenes, and it doesn't seem fake at all. He's very expressive face, and I thought that was really, really good.
And it was heart-wrenching in a couple of these dialogue back and forth with him and his brother, because as we mentioned, we go right back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, where Jesse he tells him, oh, you know all about cults, don't you? Because he says, why are you here with this cults? And he's like, oh, you were basically one to talk about cults,
Right. Yeah, and they also, like we mentioned this earlier, where they kind of pick at each other in terms of scripture. Like, is it in the scripture to pit the sick people against each other? And he says, is it in the scripture to kill people? And
right.
And then I didn't pull this up, but I know this is from Ecclesiastes, where he says,
it's a time for
time to kill, time to heal, time to build up, and a time to break down.
Right.
So yeah, that's in Ecclesiastes. I don't know where, but I've read it a bunch.
Yeah. So, they go back and forth, and then, as they're talking, and Jesse finds out that his brother has been to the city multiple times since he's been there, and he's been there for 25 years, is what we learned.
Right. And they're not allowed to, I think it's like with the Zealots, they're not allowed to visit people, or they're not allowed to, I don't remember exactly what he says, but.
Well, I think he said he wasn't allowed to visit that because it's a pagan area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what he said.
That makes sense, yep.
Yeah. And so he couldn't be seen there.
Right.
So,
and they again, for like the third time in the episode, they reference that scripture from Zephaniah 3:16 through 18.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And he reads back the actual note that he left him when he disappeared the next morning when they were kids. or
Yeah,
younger.
He still has like the scroll.
And he reads it back to him. And at the very end of that scroll, he says that this is a note from Simon to Jesse. If you're walking, I know the Messiah has arrived.
Yeah, and he says, "I stand by that," or something
I stand
like
by
that.
that.
I stand by that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they part ways.
And this is kind of setting up the attempted assassination scene. And and it's funny because the assassination scene is almost the exact same thing that they do in the training exercise earlier.
Yes.
They like stage an argument. He runs into a guy pushing his cart. He spills the arrows, but then something else happens.
Right. And so, we cut back over to them doing that, getting ready, prepping for that training scene that we saw earlier. Then we go back to the pool. This is when Jesus enters. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you yesterday, Stephen, or not, but have you noticed in every episode that Jesus has been in, for the most part, he wears purple?
No.
You know what purple signifies, right?
Royalty,
right?
Yeah.
Royalty, the king.
I hadn't picked up on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just I thought about it the other day. I thought I had mentioned the last episode, but apparently I didn't. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, I wonder if I talked about that last time. So,
it's fascinating.
And I was just thinking about this too, or I was thinking about earlier when I rewatched the episode. When they enter it, you kind of hear like Peter and them kind of cough a little bit, because could you imagine the smell in that area?
Yeah.
A lot of those people can't walk and move and stuff like that. So you start thinking about hygiene and thinking about what happens to the waste and stuff like that. Can you imagine what that smell must have been like?
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's near the sheep gate.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's by the stables, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow, man. You're picking up on some stuff too, man. This is awesome. So I saw that earlier in the episode. I forgot to mention that when Simon goes down there, he Simon the Zealot, he covers his nose and reacts to the smell. So yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. So this scene picks up right out of John, that scripture you were reading right before. And Jesus, Simon or Peter asked Jesus, "Why are they there?" And he's like, "Who are we looking for?" And Jesus is like, "There he is." And they're like, "Who?" He's like, "The longest person that's been here."
Yeah, and I didn't even realize that the amount of time he had been there is also written. So he says one man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years.
Yeah.
And that earlier in the scene with Simon the Zealot, he said that amount of time. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool where the water is stirred up. And while I'm going down the steps down before me," Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked.
Right. There's a little bit more dialogue in this scene that they expound on, but that's the scripture what you just read, and Jesse replies in that manner what you just said, and Jesus tells him, "That's not what I asked you. I asked you, do you want to be healed? Not who isn't doing what for you, who's not, and things like that." And so it was a pretty poignant statement, because it breaks Jesse down.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. He's like, they're trampling on me, or they would kick me, and and what does he say? "I'm not asking about who's helping you or who's not helping. I'm asking about you."
Right.
And I've tried. Yeah. And
he
says
also,
this pool is nothing for you too.
Right. Yeah. And also in this scene, the Pharisees are there at the pool as well. They're over in the corner, I guess, just kind of hanging out, watching everybody, make sure they're obeying Shabbat. I don't know. The Shabbat guidelines.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is in the scripture too. Yeah. After it happens, but we'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
And so, John's there. John's writing his tablet now. He's writing, I don't know if you caught that or not.
That.
Yeah. He's writing his tablet of what's taking place. And, when Jesus ask him again, "Let me ask you again then, do you want to be healed?" And the guy, nods and just, starts to break down because he wants to be healed. And he's like, "Then get up." What are you waiting for? And he taps his legs, and he can feel his legs again. And he gets up.
Yeah, I mean, and so like it was just pick up. Yeah, it's like these the scenes that really hit me in the feels the most are just the simple like redemption scenes that are based on scripture.
Yeah,
where it's like what it would be like to actually be there, like pick up your bed and walk.
Yeah,
it was a great moment.
And so Jesus doesn't even tell him his name. Jesus doesn't say who he is. He just and then he leans in and kisses him on the cheek, and he walks out. And the disciples are still hanging around, and Simon comes up to him. He's like, you're going to need that. And he's like, why? He's like, because you'll never need to come back here again, or something like that. Everything changes from here on out, is what Simon tells him, or Peter, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's when the Pharisee rushes over. You can't pick up your mat on Shabbat.
Yeah, and so that's from the scripture too. It says so now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.' They asked him, 'Who is the man who said that to you? Take up your bed and walk.' And he did not know at the time that it was who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn as there was a crowd in the place."
Yeah. And that's basically kind of follows that template of that scene as it plays out. And that's when Matthew speaks up a little bit. He's like, picking up your mat is against Sabbath or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's when John says only the oral, oral tradition it is.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and this comes up again and again in the Gospels. Yep.
Yeah.
And Jesus is getting his rebuke on.
Yeah, so this is the first public rebuke of the Pharisees, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't remember in that scene where he heals the guy in Capernaum, whether he like rebuked them. Maybe he did. I don't remember exactly. I got to rewatch that scene.
He quotes scripture to Shmuel.
Yeah.
And I forgot what scripture it was, but he quotes it to him. And
I think he says like that. That's the I am that I am.
Yeah. He claimed that he was God and you did nothing. That's what he was telling Nicodemus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is well, I'm not gonna say anything. So as we keep going here in this scene here, Matthew's like, we gotta go. And so they take off, and we follow we go back to the assassination.
Right. Yeah,
plot.
This is the scene. This is the scene where they want everything to go as planned, and you can tell Simon the Zealot is like nervous, and he's about to murder a guy, and then something changes at the end.
I don't think he's nervous. I think he's shaken from that whole the entire time he's been there, because of his brother and everything he said, and I just don't think he's focused on what he's supposed to be doing. That's just my. I could be totally wrong.
I was just thinking the way that he's like earlier in the episode where he's like looking over seeing the people crucified. He had seen them a couple times and know that what the penalty is for murder. So maybe not nervous isn't the right word, but he certainly knows what the consequences are.
Correct. Yeah. So as they prepare for it, we find out that the agent decided to go ahead and play the part of the magistrate in this. So he's there, and he's planning to kill Simon, and in the act. And as it plays out, exactly how they trained it. He gets knocked over, and fruit spills over, and he's collecting the fruit, and he's reached for his dagger, and through the alleyway, he sees Jesse walk by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems for a second that he doesn't know. He almost doesn't believe that it's Jesse, because first of all, it's a shot from the side, and he's kind of like covered up, and he sees him from from behind after he pursues him. But it just seemed like a kind of a faith moment to me. Is that him? I don't believe it. And then he goes because he has to know once he deviates from what he was supposed to do, he can't go back. So he is stepping out in a way, like you said, in faith that was his brother that just walked by. Yeah, and it also, so he has his dagger almost drawn, and then he kind of doesn't take it away, and he runs after
Jesse.
Jesse, and I don't think what happens in this scene is in the scripture, but examples of it are where after Jesus will heal a paralytic, or I think also in Acts when the apostles do that, they're like leaping and jumping, and so like
Yeah.
he like
Did a little
dances,
dance.
or he does
Yeah.
a dance, yeah, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. Like because we see what happens to people that are paralyzed, right? When you don't have use of your legs, they kind of shrivel up, because there's no muscle. Your muscle isn't built up to walk anymore. So, you kind of lose that ability. But, when Jesus is healed, their legs are restored and their abilities are all restored. So it's, he doesn't just give him the ability to walk and now he's going to have to go rehab. No, he can go run a marathon if he wanted to,
Yeah, yeah. It was the same thing with the Samaritan in that one a couple episodes ago. I guess in the first, I don't remember. But yeah, he was like healed right away, and they were like, whatever.
Yeah. And so, after that scene, we cut back out to the outside the gate with Jesus and the disciples walking out, and Simon, he's just just excited. You know how Peter gets. Peter's just excited. He's an excited individual. It just tells Jesus, thank you for letting him be there to witness that. That was watching the Pharisees get mad was fun, but watching the miracle was the highlight of that whole thing. Right. And Jesus, Matthew then says, that guy's been there for so long, another 30 minutes wouldn't have hurt at the end of Shabbat. And that's when Jesus said, sometimes you have to stir the water.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of like the pool. When the pool gets stirred, that's when everybody was supposed to rush in to get the healing properties.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even think about that. I just, so I think like this healing on the Sabbath here, it happens a few more times. Like the guy with the shriveled hand was also on the Sabbath, and that's where he kind of brings up. I don't know if that happens in other episodes. I'm sure it does, but
I don't remember. I didn't get a chance to go look. I was just thinking about it before we came on air. Jesse, he was healed at their walk. Do they use him as a witness later on to try to convict Jesus when they capture him? Because they bring witnesses. Remember? I don't remember.
Know. I know that later he sees Jesus in the temple. That's the end of the next chapter of John 2, I believe, that I was just reading, or John 5.
Right.
But I don't know if whether that's the same guy from later during like the trial or whatever. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm curious. We need to look it up now before we go because witnesses at Jesus' trial.
First.
Perjury in the crowd, but they were unwilling to risk the terrible consequence of lying against a man accused of a capital crime. It's in Matthew 26.
I don't know.
I'm trying to quickly read through here real quick.
I would guess no. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. For some reason, I thought there was. I know that he had a lot of false witnesses came against him. I thought there was somebody there that came back and said no, that he healed me or whatever. But I guess not. Okay. I don't know why I was thinking that then.
Yeah, I want to find it, but I don't think it's there.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a good. It's good, good like microcosm of scripture. Like I want it to be there, but it's it's what's there that matters.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good episode, man. That was great.
Fantastic episode. Yeah. I just wanted to say real quick, and just because I know you and I are very passionate about this series, and I just want to kind of talk to the audience real quick, just for a moment, that there is so much garbage out there on television. Steve and I have talked about it numerous times on this program, and I've talked about it numerous times on my other channel and stuff like that. And we always complain about there's nothing good that we can share with our families. Or, it has tons of sex, or it has profanity, it has gruesome stuff, it has stuff that's very amoral that goes against maybe the way you raise your kids. If you haven't watched The Chosen yet, if you haven't watched this series is something you can watch with your entire family. You can all sit down and watch it together. We always complain about how there isn't stuff for us. There is stuff if you look. And you don't have to support those other entertainment mediums, such as things that Hollywood produces, or the filth that you see on cable television, or even normal network television these days. And it's getting worse. I did a video on Odyssey today talking about the upcoming month, June. And we talked about the alphabet community many times, and how they've stolen God's promise, the rainbow flag. The rainbow is our promise, God's promise to humanity that he wouldn't reflood the earth again. That's ours. That rainbow is ours. And many times we've allowed that community to take it and just to completely, basically spit on it. Spit on God's promise. And, with this month coming up here, share this series with somebody. Share it with somebody that hasn't watched it. I was talking to somebody today, and I always bring up The Chosen from time to time, because sometimes it's a good segue into introducing somebody to the Bible sometimes. Not saying that you can't introduce them with just scripture and Bible, but sometimes entertainment's a different medium you can introduce elements to people with. And I encourage you, share it with your people that are non-Christians. Share it with them, because there's something there for them. And if anything, if you're unable to witness to them, if you're not confident to witness to them, or maybe you're scared, use this medium as a way of witnessing, and then encourage them to ask you questions about it later. Hey, if you have any questions about any of the stuff you find, ask me, tell me about it. So that, my friends, is what we should be doing. And again, like I said, I think, I can speak for Stephen on this, that this is a show that you can absolutely share with your friends, family, and even your enemies. I would share it with them. So,
well said, man.
And, I told Stephen before we came on air today, I said, I don't know how many people are going to be on tonight, because I know this is over on the Uniquely Us channel. We don't have the reach. I shared it. But I told Stephen, ultimately, it's not about how many people show up. It's about who actually watches it. And God has a plan for somebody to watch this. So it's not up to us. We are going to talk about it. We're going to do our best to divide it up and talk about different scenes and scripture in it, and try to share with you guys the things that we caught or saw and things like that. So, it doesn't matter if it's one person watching or if it's, thousands of people are watching. It just matters. It gets to the person it needs to get to.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, season...
Take back the rainbow.
Yeah, take back the rainbow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, episode 5... Steven still has to watch, so I won't give away any spoilers, but it's fantastic. It piggybacks on this, and there are lots of moments that hit you in the feels in this next episode. Cool. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get your box of tissues ready, because you're going to need them for episode 5. If you have not watched it yet, you're going to need it. And for everyone that watched it, already knows what I'm talking about. So you guys make sure you do that. And of course, Stephen and I will be back next Monday, 9 p.m., Lord willing, to talk about episode 5. And hopefully they'll have episode 6 out by that point. So that way we continue to kind of follow along behind them. Stephen, do you have any kind of final thoughts about this episode and where you think we're heading for the next one?
No, not really. I mean, I think I mentioned this off air that I was expecting Simon the Zealot to join the crew during this episode, but he didn't. So I maybe expect that to happen next. And I just, I think we're going to see the interaction between the Pharisees and Jesus ramping up, now that they're back in Jerusalem. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conflict. Which I like.
And so I'm still curious if we're going to see, what's his name again? The guard
Jesse?
for Matthew.
Oh yeah. Gaius. I hope,
Gaius and what's the Praetor? Not Praetor. Yeah, Praetor.
Quintus.
Yeah, yep. I'd say whenever we'll see those two guys again.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so.
But that's it for tonight. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. God bless, and we'll hope to see you guys next Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget to tell your friends, family about it. Don't forget to tell them about the show, too. Maybe they want to see a little bit more insight after watching an episode, or maybe direct them to all the old episodes. Maybe they're just starting. They want to see, like, season 1. We got that covered. Season 1's covered with us. So we appreciate it, and we'll talk to you guys later. God bless, everyone.
Take care.